Rain hammered down on the streets of Kigali, the kind that turned alleys into rivers and made even the rich hurry home. Tariq Ndiaye, the city's most powerful billionaire, strode fast through the night, his driver trailing with an umbrella that never seemed big enough. He had meetings waiting, calls stacked, a whole empire pulling at him. But then he stopped. In the corner of the market, beneath a weak, flickering lamp, he saw something that froze him in place. His daughter, little Mala, her silk dress damp at the hem, sat on a wooden crate. And next to her, barefoot, hair wild, clothes torn, was a girl he had never seen before. Asha Kumbala. She held a torn pencil like it was gold, whispering letters softly, guiding Mala's small hand across a page gone limp from rain. The contrast was sharp as a blade, his world of chauffeurs and glass towers set against her world of mud, hunger, and survival. Yet Mala wasn't afraid. She was listening, eyes wide, lips trembling as she tried to sound out each word. And Asha, who had nothing, gave her everything in that moment, patience, warmth, a kind of hope no tutor had ever managed to reach. Tariq felt something break open inside him. He saw not just his daughter, but himself, years ago, when he too had once clung to words like they were lifelines. His chest tightened, his heart misfired. And right there in the pouring rain, the world he had built tilted on its axis. Tariq Ndiaye was not always the man the world bowed to. Long before the jets, the towers, the headlines, he was a boy in Lemba Bay who went to bed with an empty stomach more nights than he could count. His father left early, his mother worked her hands raw selling fish that barely sold, and Tariq learned quickly that the world respected only power and money. He studied under the street lamps when there was no candle at home, stealing hours with borrowed books. Hunger made him sharp, ambition made him ruthless, and when a scholarship carried him out of the bay, he never looked back. Brick by brick, deal by deal, he built his empire until the boy in torn sandals disappeared behind a billionaire in polished shoes. Yet buried under all that success was a memory he never let anyone touch, the small, desperate child who once whispered words into the dark, praying they would be his escape. Asha Kumbala's road bent the other way. She was born in the green hills of Zaruni, a village that sang with drums and laughter. Her father tilled the earth, her mother taught her songs, and she dreamed of becoming a teacher one day. But tragedy came sudden, sickness swept her family, leaving her alone and broke. The land was sold, the house lost, and Asha drifted into the city with nothing but her voice and her stubborn will. On Kigali's streets she carried scraps of notebooks, teaching younger children letters and songs because, as she once told herself, if I can keep one child from forgetting, I have not lost everything. Mala lived in another universe altogether. Tariq's only child, she grew up inside walls so high she could barely see the world beyond them. Nannies dressed her, tutors tested her, guards drove her from mansion to school and back again. Her father was always busy. He loved her, she knew, but his love came like short phone calls, quick hugs at the door, promises postponed until after the meeting. Mala often ate alone, staring at books that seemed more like punishments than adventures. Words felt heavy, reading felt like climbing a wall too tall. She stopped trying, and nobody noticed. Nobody but her. That night in the rain, when Asha bent low and whispered the sound of each letter, it was the first time Mala felt reading was a game instead of a burden. And for Tariq, standing in the shadows, it was the first time in years he saw his daughter's face glow with discovery, a glow he had once carried himself as a boy with nothing. Their worlds collided under that weak market lamp, Tariq's hardened ambition, Asha's quiet resilience, and Mala's longing for connection. It mattered because Tariq suddenly remembered what hunger once taught him, and because Mala finally tasted the joy he had long forgotten to share. In that small moment, the cracks in their lives lined up, showing not distance but possibility. The rain had slowed, falling in soft drops that tapped against tin roofs and plastic sheets stretched over the market stalls. The smell of roasted maize drifted through the damp night air, mixed with the sharp scent of wet earth. Under the weak lamp, its light flickering like a tired heartbeat, Asha crouched low beside Mala. Her feet were bare, caked in mud, but her hands were steady as she held a torn pencil, sharpened unevenly with a blade. She pressed it gently into Mala's small palm as though passing a secret. "This letter," she whispered, her voice carrying the rhythm of an old lullaby, "is M. Say it with me. M. Mala hesitated. Her lips parted, a sound caught halfway. Her eyes darted up, wide and unsure, waiting for the scolding she often expected when she failed. But Asha only smiled, a smile thin and brittle from a hard life, yet full of patience. She tapped the page again, tracing the shaky lines with her finger. Like Mama, she said softly, M is for Mama. Mala's face shifted, the fear easing a little. She whispered back, M. Mama. Asha clapped lightly, her joy unforced, her laughter quick and bright even though her teeth showed the hunger of many missed meals. From her pocket she pulled a pebble, smooth and shiny, and placed it in Mala's hand as a reward. Every word you learn, you keep a stone. One day you'll have a pocket full of stories. Mala giggled, clutching the pebble as though it were treasure. Around them the market buzzed with its own rhythm. Traders shouted prices, a baby cried in the distance, someone cursed as a wheelbarrow tipped in the mud. Yet in that circle of lamplight, all of it faded. It was only a girl with nothing giving her gift of words to a child who had everything but warmth. Asha guided Mala again. The pencil trembled in the little hand, scratching uneven marks across the page. Good, Asha whispered. Better than yesterday. She hummed the same lullaby line between letters, the tune rising and falling like a thread tying them together. Mala leaned closer, comforted by the sound, her shoulders relaxing as she tried again. A man walking past slowed his steps. He pulled out an old phone, its screen cracked in a spiderweb, and began to film. To him, it looked like a strange picture, the billionaire's daughter in silk shoes learning from a barefoot street girl under a broken lamp. He shook his head, half in wonder, half in disbelief, and kept recording. The glow of the phone added its own faint light to the scene, turning their small moment into something larger, something no longer private. But Asha and Mala didn't notice. One letter turned into another, one smile into a laugh, one pebble into two. The rain softened, the market noise swelled, and in that fragile corner of the night, a sacred lesson unfolded. It was the kind of moment that should have stayed between a teacher and her student, but the world was already watching, ready to make it into something else. Tariq stood frozen a few steps away, his shoes sinking slightly into the wet ground, the rain dripping from his expensive coat. His eyes fixed on the scene before him, and something inside him cracked open like glass under pressure. At first came shame, sharp and heavy, because here was his daughter, his own flesh and blood, learning more in 5 minutes from a barefoot stranger than from the polished tutors he paid fortunes for. He felt exposed, as if the thin light from that flickering lamp was aimed not at the girls but at him, stripping him of his carefully built image. Then came nostalgia, creeping like an old ghost. He remembered himself at 10 years old, sitting on the edge of a broken crate in Lemba Bay, holding a piece of charcoal instead of a pencil. He saw again the face of an older boy from his street, a boy who used to kneel beside him and show him how to form words on scraps of cardboard. The boy's name was Kilo, and he had nothing, not even shoes, but he had given Tariq the key to the world, letters, sounds, meaning. That memory, buried deep under years of money and power, returned so vividly it felt like a wound reopening. For a second, Tariq saw himself not as the billionaire he had become but as the hungry child he once was. But he pushed the thought away. Denial was his shield. He told himself this was nothing but a chance encounter, a curiosity on a rainy night. He told himself Mala would forget it by morning, that a billionaire's daughter did not need pebbles or lullabies to learn. He told himself he could walk past, climb into his car, and return to his world of towers and glass. Yet his feet would not move. His chest tightened again, each breath caught between pride and regret. The sound of Mala's laughter broke him further. It was small, clear, and full of joy he had not heard in her voice for months. It was the sound of a child discovering something on her own terms, not through pressure or grades but through kindness. It was the sound of a bond he had never managed to create with her. And hearing it, Tariq realized the truth he had been avoiding: all his money, all his power, had built walls around his daughter but never bridges. In that moment, a kind of moral weight pressed down on him. He could either turn away and let the moment pass, or he could step into it and risk everything that came with being seen, by his daughter, by the stranger teaching her, by the world. His mind raced with calculations, the way it did in boardrooms, but his heart pushed faster than logic. The shame, the memory of Kilo, the joy on Mala's face, all of it collided until it no longer felt like a choice. It felt like a command rising from inside him. And so, before he could stop himself, Tariq moved. It was sudden, impulsive, almost reckless. But it was the first decision in years that came not from strategy, not from ambition, but from something raw and human. It was the beginning of what he would do next. It happened so quickly that Tariq himself barely understood it. 1 second he was watching from the shadows, the next he was kneeling under the lamp, his hand resting on Mala's shoulder, his voice low as he thanked Asha for what she had done. He took off his coat and placed it gently over the girl's thin shoulders, shielding her from the damp air. People nearby gasped. The man with the cracked phone camera caught everything, Tariq's sharp suit bending in the mud, the billionaire bowing his head to a barefoot street girl, Mala smiling brighter than ever before. It was only meant to be a private moment of gratitude, but the video moved faster than rainwater down the streets of Kigali. By dawn, it was everywhere. Headlines exploded first. Billionaire stoops in the rain. Tariq Ndiaye humbled by street teacher. From empire to empathy, the night Kigali changed. Some praised him, some sneered. Talk shows replayed the 30-second clip on loop, voices arguing over its meaning. Was it a genuine act of kindness or a staged performance by a man who understood the power of cameras too well? On social media, the storm was louder. Hashtags bloomed, hashtag teach like Asha, hashtag Tariq the true, hashtag rich man in the rain. Thousands of people shared their own stories of teachers who changed their lives, holding the video up as proof that humanity still existed in unlikely places. At the same time, critics tore him apart. Angry threads accused him of using a poor girl as a prop, of trying to clean his reputation after years of ruthless business deals. Others mocked him, one coat in the rain, and suddenly he's a saint. The noise grew global. Newspapers in Paris, blogs in Nairobi, channels in New York all picked it up. Commentators split into camps, some painted Tariq as a savior who finally remembered his roots, others as a cold opportunist who had mastered the theater of compassion. A few called him both, saying it didn't matter why he did it. The image itself was too powerful to ignore. For Asha, the attention was confusing and overwhelming. Strangers showed up in the market asking for her, reporters hunted her down, flashing microphones in her face. For Mala, it was strange too, her classmates whispered about the video, some impressed, others teasing. And for Tariq, the man used to controlling every headline about his empire, it felt like losing control. A private spark had become a fire sweeping across the world. The moment under the flickering lamp had not stayed between a teacher, a child, and a father. It had been captured, leaked, shared, and magnified until it belonged to everyone. What had started as an impulsive act of gratitude was now a debate raging on screens and in living rooms everywhere. Tariq was no longer just a billionaire, he was a symbol, whether he wanted to be or not. The storm did not fade, it only grew heavier. In the boardroom of his empire, Tariq sat stiff as his trustees fired questions at him. One rival trustee, a man who had long envied Tariq's power, leaned forward with a smirk and accused him of grandstanding. One coat, one street girl, and suddenly you are the city's conscience. Do not insult us. This was a performance, and you know it. The word stung because Tariq himself wasn't sure anymore. Was it performance if the world only believed it through a camera's lens? Or was it something real that now looked staged because of who he was? For Asha, the attention turned from wonder to suffocation. People she had never met arrived with gifts, with cameras, with plans for her life that she had not chosen. Some offered her money but with strings attached, others wanted her to tell her story, in glossy magazines, reducing her to a symbol of pity. She was invited to parties where she was paraded as the girl who taught a billionaire's daughter. Each offer felt like another hand taking away her dignity. She began to wonder if the lesson under the lamp had been stolen from her, turned into a product that no longer belonged to her or to Mala. Mala, too, faced her own storm. At school, the video had turned her into a subject of gossip. Some classmates teased her for being too dumb to read until a street girl helped. Others were impressed, whispering that her father might finally care about her. The attention confused her, embarrassed her, and yet a small part of her held on to the joy of that night, the one moment she had felt seen. Back in his office, Tariq's board demanded he hand over control of the narrative. We must craft the right story, one advisor said, sliding charts across the table. If we spin this as a philanthropic gesture, we can turn backlash into profit. They spoke as if it were a campaign, not a human moment. Tariq listened, silent, his mind split. The man who had built his empire on strategy knew they were right, control the story or be destroyed by it. But another part of him resisted. The whole reason he had stepped into that lamplight was because it wasn't strategy. Now they wanted to crush the rawness, polish it, and sell it. The cost of sudden celebrity kindness was now clear, Asha's dignity was under threat, Mala's childhood was pierced with shame, and Tariq's empire itself trembled between image and truth. He had wanted only to act as a father, but the world had turned him into a figure to dissect, praise, or attack. The question grew heavier each day: was there a way to honor the moment without destroying the lives it had touched? And that question did not yet have an answer. The cameras kept following Asha, but she began to push back. One morning, when a journalist tried to hand her a new dress for a staged photo, she shook her head and gave it back. Her voice was calm but firm. "I don't teach children because I want pity. I teach because no child should feel lost the way I once did." The crowd around her went silent. People had been treating her as a symbol, a miracle, or a victim, but in that moment, she spoke for herself. Her words carried more weight than the flashy headlines. Later, when Tariq arranged to meet her in private, hoping to offer her a scholarship, a safe home, and money for her future, Asha listened politely but refused. Her eyes were steady as she told him her truth. "I lost my family when I was young. My father taught me songs, my mother taught me letters, and I carry both inside me. When they died, I promised myself I would not let those gifts disappear. That is why I sit in the streets and teach. It is not about what I need. It is about what the children need. If you give me money to escape, who will stay to help them?" Her words struck Tariq harder than any headline. He had thought of her as someone to rescue, someone to lift out of poverty like a prize for his generosity. But Asha refused to be rescued. She did not want to be his charity story. She wanted her work to matter where she stood. Her strength was not in waiting for someone richer to save her but in refusing to abandon her purpose. She explained how she gathered children every evening, giving them simple rituals, pebbles, songs, scraps of notebooks, so they could hold on to the beauty of learning even if the world ignored them. "If they can read, they can dream," she said quietly. "And if they can dream, they can fight for something better." She wasn't angry, only steady, her words clear like water cutting through stone. For the first time, Tariq realized this was not about his image or even about his daughter's joy. This was about a principle bigger than him, bigger than the moment caught on video. Asha was not an object of sympathy but a force of respect. She had turned the story upside down. The billionaire was no longer the hero, the barefoot girl was. As he left that meeting, Tariq felt shaken. His advisors wanted him to control the narrative, to polish the charity angle. But he knew now that the real story was not his to control. It belonged to Asha, to the children, to the voices the world rarely listened to. For the first time, Tariq began to wonder if true change meant not giving from above but standing beside. And that thought unsettled him more than any headline ever could. Tariq could not sleep for nights after meeting Asha. The board kept pressing him to turn the story into a neat charity campaign, but her words echoed louder than their voices. "If you give me money to escape, who will stay to help them?" It kept circling in his mind until finally he did something no one expected, not even himself. Instead of writing a giant check, instead of announcing another foundation with his name on it, he flew quietly to Mboka district, the poorest part of the city where Asha often gathered children. He didn't arrive with cameras or bodyguards in shining cars. He came with a notebook, a translator, and Asha by his side. Together, they sat with teachers, parents, and street vendors. He asked them what they needed, and he listened. That alone shocked people who knew him. Tariq Ndiaye, the man who once never listened to anyone, now taking notes on broken school benches. The plan that grew out of those meetings was not simple charity. It was radical. He agreed to move part of his company's headquarters into Mboka, bringing jobs directly into the community. He committed funds not for handouts but for schools that Asha and the local leaders would design themselves. They planned teacher training, free meals for children, and small libraries in every corner. It was not just money dropped from above, it was a structure built from the ground with the people who would live inside it. The logistics were messy and dramatic. Investors panicked, accusing him of madness. "You cannot move business into slums," they said. Politicians argued, unsure if they should praise or resist him. Some partners threatened to pull out. Workers in his own company protested, afraid of change. But Tariq did not back down. For once, he was not chasing profit, he was chasing something that felt closer to redemption. With Asha guiding him, he stood firm, telling his board, "If we can build glass towers, we can build schools. If we can create wealth, we can repair what wealth destroyed." News spread again, louder than before. This was no code in the rain, this was a shockwave. Commentators called it foolish, brave, reckless, visionary. Other billionaires watched nervously, realizing they could no longer hide behind symbolic donations. Politicians scrambled to frame it as their own victory or failure. Ordinary people filled the streets, chanting Asha's name alongside his, because everyone understood it was not only Tariq's decision. It was hers too. The ripples reached far. In Nairobi, in Lagos, even in New York, activists pointed to Mboka and said, "Look, change can start here." And Tariq, standing on a muddy schoolyard beside Asha as the first walls rose, realized something strange. The world was shocked, yes, but no one was more shocked than he was. For the first time in his life, he felt not like a billionaire above the people, but like a man finally standing among them. 1 year later, the streets of Mboka sounded different. Where once there had been silence and hunger, now came the laughter of children spilling out of a small, busy community school. The walls were painted in bright colors, the windows open to the air, and in one corner sat Mala, her hair tied back neatly, a book open in her lap. She read aloud with a clear, confident voice, her words flowing easily, no longer heavy or halting. Other children listened, some repeating after her, and the pride in her smile lit up the room. At the front, Asha moved among the students, no longer alone but leading a team of young teachers she had trained herself. She still carried her torn pencil in her pocket like a lucky charm, but now she held chalk in her hand, guiding lessons with the same patience that had once touched Mala under the market lamp. Her teaching collective had grown into a movement, and children who once wandered the streets now sat at desks, their pockets full of pebbles, their notebooks full of words. Tariq visited quietly, often slipping into the back of the classroom without announcement. He never gave speeches there, never brought cameras. He watched his daughter reading beside children who had once been strangers, and each time he felt the same ache, pride mixed with guilt, love mixed with humility. He had learned that money could build buildings, but only respect could build trust. One afternoon, as the lesson ended, Mala ran to Asha and placed a pebble in her hand. "This is for you," she said. Asha looked down, then up, her eyes shining. It was a small moment, no headlines, no spectacle, just the quiet proof that change had lasted.